Hello and welcome to today's webinar for Fun Literacy Activities with Google Docs. This session is part of a series of free webinars offered every week or two by the Stark Portage Area Computer Consortium, or SPARC for short. SPARC is an information technology center up here in Northeast Ohio where we support about 30 school districts. However, this webinar is open to everyone, and we'd like to welcome all the people who have joined us live today or are watching the recording in the future. My name is Eric Curts, and I'm a technology integration specialist here at SPARC, and I'll be your presenter for this session today. If you need to get in touch with me, here's my contact screen. Again, I'm a Google certified trainer and innovator and a tech specialist here at SPARC. I run a blog at controlaltachieve.com, which will be where a lot of our resources are going to be found here today that we're going to be taking a look at. Excellent. All the information for today's webinar can be found at tiny.cc/spark242. Now, if you're watching this live, you're probably already at that website. But if by chance you're watching this in the future recorded and you're seeing the video in some other format, this is the site you want to go to, tiny.cc/spark242. And that's going to take you out to this page, which is, again, where the live video is at now. It will be where the recorded video will be in the future. A couple of resources on this page I want to draw your attention to. Let me zoom in a bit on that page so you can see that a little bit better. Below the video, you will see we have a slideshow for the session and 4 blog posts. And these are the 4 different literacy activities we're going to be taking a look at. So as we work through this training today, we're going to be going down through each of these 4, maybe not in that order, but all 4 of those. And so those links will be valuable to you. Below there, you will see a live session chat document. This is a Google document. Please feel free to open that up. If you have any questions today during the session or suggestions or ideas or comments you'd like to provide, that is an editable document. Anybody can type in that. We would encourage you to do so. I will do my best to keep an eye on that document throughout the session to see what questions you have and answer those. Also, please feel free to help each other. If you have an answer to a question somebody has posted, go ahead and type in your answer. I'd appreciate that. Below there is a session evaluation. So afterwards, I would encourage you to fill out that form. Your feedback helps us to improve these webinars. And below there, I think the link is there now. Let me refresh it and see if the link is there. Yes, it is there now. There is a link to a Google form quiz. So after watching the webinar, you can take this quiz and it will generate a PDF certificate of attendance for 1 contact hour for watching that. Would definitely encourage you to do that and turn that in to your school. While you are there on the site, when you get a chance, you might want to check out a couple other things, such as the PD schedule link at the top. This will show any other upcoming trainings. I got one scheduled for a couple of weeks out called Google Sheets Activities for All Subjects, where we're going to show that spreadsheets aren't just for math. They're great for any subject. We'll show some fun activities for you to use with Google Sheets and all of the different subjects. Fantastic. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started into our session today. Oh, we do have one quick question before we get started in here. We have some folks saying that they're having a little trouble pulling up the video, and they're saying it is showing up that it is restricted. It could be that your school may have, this is being broadcast through YouTube, and so it could be that the video is, that YouTube there may be some blocks on YouTube in your district. That would be the only thing I could say about that. So I'm not positive if that could be the situation. Somebody is mentioning that they opened it up in Safari and they were able to get to it instead of Chrome. So sorry about that. If people are having a hard time viewing the live video, it could possibly be a restriction on YouTube in your district. Keep in mind, though, that this is being recorded. So for any reason you're not able to see it live today, you will be able to watch the recorded video at anytime after this. But thanks for the suggestion in the document. Somebody said they opened it up in Safari instead of Chrome, and the live video played properly for them there. So very good. All right. So we're getting a lot of good questions in there, even before we get started. How about that? And somebody is saying that, okay, I think, yeah, we are getting a few people saying they're not able to get the video. could be, like I said, because of a potential YouTube block within your district. All right. Very good. If you are having trouble with the video, though, again, I would encourage you to refresh that page and or try a different browser or try a different device. All right. Well, let's go ahead and we will get started into this right now. So we're going to be talking today about 4 different ways to use Google Docs for literacy activities. Now, the 4 that we're going to be looking at, I've called Docs Blackout, Emoji Activities, Write Less to Write Better, and Choose Your Own Adventure Stories. Now, as far as what you need to do this session today, really just a Google account. Doesn't have to be anything special. It could be a school account, it could be a personal account. That's perfectly fine. And access to Google Docs. This is an introductory session. There's no special needed add-ons or programs. We're just going to be using regular old Google Docs for these examples here today. But the idea is to look at some fun ways that we can use Google Docs to help work on reading and writing skills. All right, let's go ahead and jump into our first example today. Now, since we're looking at 4 different things today, I'm going to try to move pretty quickly through these. Having said that, all of these have a whole lot more information on my blog. And so, for example, the first one we're going to talk about today is called Google Docs Blackout. And you can find all the information about this in much more detail at my blog, controlaltachieve.com/Docs Blackout. So you can either use that link there, or again, if you're watching the live video or the recorded video later, right below the video, you'll find these same links, and you'll see right there, the very first one, Improve Reading Comprehension with Google Docs Blackout, and there is a link to that page. And so I'm going to go through each of these 4 with you here today, but having said that, I will move quickly to be able to get through all 4 of them in this time. So I would definitely encourage you to refer to the blog posts for each one of these for all of the additional details on these. All right, so let's go ahead and start with our first one, which is Google Docs Blackout. And what is that all about? Okay, so here's the idea. Originally, I came across this idea with an excellent article that I found on the website TeachThought. And I'll go ahead and pull that up just so you can be aware of what that article was. There was a great article there where they were talking about something called text reduction strategy. And the idea was that you could have students take, in this case, it was magazines, so magazine articles, take magazine articles and then use a black magic marker or Sharpie and basically cross out everything in the magazine article that wasn't critical to the main point of the article. Basically, working on summarization skills by removing things that were not critical to the content. Now, what was great about this idea was that it was sort of a scaffolding activity to help students as they're working towards summarization, rather than the students having to come up with their own words to summarize the article. They were taking what was already there and basically just removing everything but what was absolutely core and critical to that. So I thought, what a neat idea. However, I thought this could really use a technology twist, because basically using physical magazines, great idea, but might be a difficulty to get a hold of that many magazines, or, might make a lot of waste with, using that much paper. And if you do mark something out with a magic marker, you can't quite, erase it, can't unmark it. So I thought, this would be great for Google Docs. What a perfect solution. So that was what my idea was to use Google Docs to replicate this activity. So here's the basic steps that you guys are going to go through, and I'm going to demonstrate this and we'll run through this together. So first thing, you need to find some kind of an article. So in the blog post, I list a bunch of my favorite sites for finding good articles out there, things like Newsella or Tween Tribune or Dogo News, a lot of different great ones out there. So it could be an article that you found online. For my example today, I am going to use, let me pull over the article I'm going to use. I'm going to use one from Dogo News. So this is an article on spiders. Scary study reveals spiders can hear you shrieking from across the room. So I'm going to use that article for my example. So first step is you want to find an article that you want your students to be doing this activity with. The next step is we basically need to take the text from that article and put it into a Google Doc. So I'll go ahead and let me create a Google Doc here. I'll go ahead and go to my Drive, and I will create a Google Doc. And basically what I'm going to want to do is copy and paste the text from this article into my Google Doc here, and then make that Google Doc available to the students. Now, for what it's worth, there are a couple of things you can do to save yourself a little bit of time here. One thing would be if you want to use a tool like Mercury Reader or any one of the many cleanup extensions that are out there, you could take this article and basically strip out everything except for the core information in here. So I believe I got Mercury Reader already installed. I'll just turn it back on. Here we go, Mercury Reader. There we go. And what Mercury Reader does, it's sort of like Clearly and Readability. Those are extensions that we used to use. A lot of, unfortunately, Clearly and Readability both have shut down, but Mercury Reader is a very similar extension. Give a click on there, and you'll see with Mercury Reader, what it does is it strips out every single thing except just the core part of the article. That might make it a little bit easier for you to then go in and copy and paste that. Links to that are in that article. And again, all of that information is at controlaltachieve.com/docsblackout. So if you want to try to get the Mercury Reader extension, you can do that as well. So now that I've got that, I'm basically just going to come here and copy that article. I'm going to go over to my doc. I'm going to paste the article in here. Now, one other little trick for you. When you go to paste, if you paste it normally, you're going to probably pick up a lot of other stuff like the formatting and the font size and so forth. So if I just do a regular paste, it's going to bring in a lot of other stuff like, you know, the pictures and the formatting and so forth. So what you're allowed to do when you go to paste is you can actually do what is called paste without formatting. And that's by going to edit and choose paste without formatting. Or if you're used to Control V for pasting, Control Shift V will do the same thing, but it will paste just the text itself instead of all of the formatting that comes with it. Now you still might want to clean up a few things, like we've got a couple of captions and stuff like that, but you get the idea there. Basically, what you would want to do is go ahead and clean up that article so that it's ready for the students. And at that point, we now will go ahead and we will push this article out to our students through Google Classroom is probably what I would do. I would just make a Google Classroom assignment, and then I would push this out to the students. And at that point, the student could go in and each student would get their own copy of this to start doing the activity on. For the sake of time, I won't go through all those steps, but I think that would probably be the easiest way to get this article out to your students. So what would the students do now? Now, I'll just pretend I'm the student. I'll just go ahead and use this particular document as if I'm the student, and I'll zoom in here a little bit so you can see this a little bit better. So here's the idea to do now is the student would read through the article, and they're going to try to black out anything in the article that's not absolutely critical to the main content of the article itself. So how do you do that? Well, basically what you're going to use is the highlight tool. Now, most of us are familiar with the highlight tool, and if not, it's up in the top toolbar. If you look in your top toolbar in Docs, there's a little button up here. You click on the drop down, and you'll see that you can change, for example, the color of your text, like if you wanted to have red text or blue text. It also has a button that says highlight. That allows you to highlight behind your text as well. So if I wanted to make something, you know, nice and bright yellow behind the I could select it and then come up here to the text color, choose highlight, and put a nice bright yellow behind it. Well, that's normally what you do with a highlight tool. We're going to kind of take a twist to it, though, and we're going to use black for our highlighting. We're actually going to highlight the text in black. So let's say I'm reading through this, and I go, you know what? Okay, first paragraph. The next time you shriek at the sight of a spider, be aware that the arachnid can hear you loud and clear from as far away as 10 feet. Well, maybe what I think is really important there is the fact that the arachnid can hear you loud and clear from as far away as 10 feet. But maybe this first part here, I don't actually need that as part of the core text. So what I could do is highlight it, go up to my text color button, go over to highlighting, and choose black for my highlighting. And there we go. I have just blacked out that text. Now I can repeat that. I can go through the rest of the document doing the same thing. And if you want to, you can just keep highlighting text, and then you can go ahead and just keep repeating the process. If you want to save yourself a little bit of time, though, what you can do is go ahead and re-highlight the text that you just, or reselect the text, select the text you just highlighted. And then there's a special button up here in the top left. It looks like this is the Paint Format button. If you click that button, it'll copy the format that you have selected, and then you can apply it to other parts of your document. If you want to make it stick, you actually double click on the little paint roller and it will lock in that format. So again, I make one of these, I go ahead and highlight or select that again, and I simply double click on the paint formatter, and you can even see now it's depressed, it's pushed in, that button's pushed in. Now if I decide, okay, let me see, what else is important? Well, the fact that it was discovered by Cornell University, that's important. So I could take off maybe the part after the researchers. So if I simply select this and let go, boom, it applies that black there, and maybe I'll take off this part here. And so I can just keep doing this throughout my entire document, blacking out all the parts that I think are not critical to the document. And it will keep using that format until I go back up and click on the roller once again. And when I finally click on it again, it'll turn off that. But that's a way to save a lot of time. You can just keep going through and doing that. Now, if later a student decides, maybe I didn't mean to black out something here, no problem. If you simply take your mouse and select over it, you can actually kind of see through it, little X-ray vision there. You can see through the black and see what words were behind it. If you say, you know what, oh, I don't think, on second thought, I didn't mean to get rid of something, no problem. Thing that you wanted to unblack out, go back up to your highlight button and choose none, and it will remove that. So even though you can't erase Sharpie, you can definitely do this inside of Google Docs. So what does this look like in the end? So a final example, I'll just pull over. Here's one that I finished. So this would be an example of what my article might look like after I've gone through and I've blacked out everything but what I think is the most important. So I'm just getting the main key ideas. So this could be an activity that I would definitely encourage you to try with your students when they're working on summarization skills, finding out what's most important, rather than having them actually, let them use the words that are already there and just remove everything else that's not critical to that. That's Google Docs Blackout. And again, for more details on how to do that, same thing with all the activities we're going to be talking about today. Each one of them has a corresponding blog post on my Control-Alt-Achieve site. For this one, it's control-alt-achieve.com/docs-blackout. And at that blog post, you will see where to find articles, how to clean them up to put them in docs, how to share them out to your students, and then how to actually do the black highlighting and how to use the paint formatter and how to remove the highlighting and so forth. All right, that's activity number one. Let's move on to our next one. Next activity we're going to talk about emoji learning activities with Google Docs. All right, so for this one, again, just as before, we do have a blog post specifically to go along with this one. This one is at control-alt-achieve.com/docs emojis. So docs emojis. And just as before, there's also a link below the live video for that. 5 emoji learning activities with Google Docs. So whichever way you prefer to get to that, you can pull up that corresponding blog post on this. Again, control-alt-achieve.com/docs emojis. All right, so let's talk about what this activity is. So it turns out that Google Docs actually supports emojis. You may not have realized that, but emojis are actually part of the special characters inside of Google Docs. So let's try this out. Let me go ahead and create a new Google Doc. And I'll show you where emojis are hiding in Google Docs. So once I get inside of Google Docs, there is a menu option up in the top called Insert. If you go up to the Insert menu option, from that dropdown, you will see Special Characters as one of the options. Now, you might be familiar with this and usually think, oh, that's how I put in, foreign language characters or the pi symbol. You're absolutely correct. You certainly can do that. If you go to Insert, Special Characters, this is where we go to put in things like that. However, when you get into the Special Characters menu and you click on your first drop down here where it says symbol, instead of symbols, you can choose other things, including, well, look at that, emoji. Click on emoji, and suddenly you will see that there are lots of categories of emojis here. Now, they include people and animal, or people and emotions. We've got animals, we've got objects, we've got sports and celebrations. Now, I'm going to pause for one moment here and say an important thing, which is emojis may look different depending upon the computer you're using, your operating system. So for example, at the moment, this particular computer I'm on is running Windows 10. So if your screen doesn't look exactly like mine with the emojis, it's very possible. I know that on a Chromebook, they look a little different than on Windows 10. On Mac OS, they look a little bit different on that. Probably where you're going to hit the biggest issues is if you're using an older computer. So like I've noticed on like Windows 7, the emojis don't even look very good. They're not like in color. They're like black and white, and a bunch of them are missing. Well, that's because Windows 7 is, unfortunately, at this point, quite an old operating system. I mean, that's many, many years back. We've gone through Windows 8 and now Windows 10. I know that starting with Windows 8.1, emojis are in color. So if you've got something earlier than that, I do apologize. They're not going to look quite the same. It may not be as fun of an activity because they may not be quite as colorful. But on a Chromebook, they're fine. Windows 8.1 and above, and on Mac OS, they should be fine. So basically, how do you find the emoji you want? Well, you got a couple of options here. One is simply do what I'm doing here. Just drill down through the menus until you find one that you like, and then just go ahead and give a click on that emoji. And when you click on it, it'll drop it right into your document. So that's one way. You can just use the drop-down menus to search through to find the emojis. Or there is a search box here. If you actually want to type in a search term, so let's say you were looking for a dog, just type in the word dog, and it will find a hot dog, a dog, and a dog face. And so you could come in here and click on one of those and add that to your document. Another option besides browsing and searching is you can actually draw here. If you're decent at drawing, you can sketch out the emoji and it will do its best to try to find a match. So we're going to try to draw a banana here. I don't know how good I will do. Let's try to draw a banana. And it found, yeah, banana. It said that maybe a moon as well. So you can even just draw out the thing you're looking for and give a click on it. So whether you draw it, type it in, or simply use the categories and search through there to find them, you can find emojis and add them to your Google document. Now, once you've got them added in there, those came in pretty small. You can make them bigger. Now, here's the key to that. If you think for, oh, these are emojis, so they're pictures. Actually, don't think of them as images, because if this was an image, I could click on the banana and I could drag it to make it larger. Emojis are not actually images according to Google Docs. They're just a special kind of text. They're special characters. That's why we went to insert special characters. So basically, anything you can do to text, you can do to the emojis, which means what? Well, that means I can highlight them and I can go to my font menu up here and I can change the font size. So if I say, let's make these emojis 60 point, boom, they're bigger. Or let's make them 96 point, boom, they're bigger. They're really the same as text. It's just like another letter. It's just a special letter. So anything you can do to text, like copy and paste, copy and paste, 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 paste. So copy and paste, or come in and change the font size. All of those are available. But it's not a picture, so you're not going to be able to rotate it or grab the corners and drag it. It's not, or crop it. Those sort of things are not going to be available. Instead, it's going to work like text. Okay, so now that we know that emojis exist in Google Docs, so what? What would we do with these? Well, here's where the fun comes in. So basically what you can do, lots of possibilities. I'll head back over to the blog post to talk about some of these. So for example, this could be a great way, again, for students to work on summaries. You could have students use emojis to do things like use emojis to represent the title of a book, a story, a movie, a song, a play. Have students summarize what happens in a story with emojis. Have students explain a science concept or a process with emojis, or have them retell a historical event using emojis. So for example, I did one here where I'll zoom in a bit so you can see this a little bit better, where I used Docs emojis to show my version of Mice and Men. So there's the title of Mice and Men. And again, this could be the students are being given titles and they're coming up with emojis to represent them, or they're making the emoji titles and then sharing them and having people try to guess what the title is. So there's an example of a title. Below there, I did my retelling of Charlotte's Web using emojis. So there's Wilbur, and he gets taken in by Fern, who then has to send him off to the farm where the farmer wants to eat him. But then Charlotte comes along and makes a web and says wonderful things about Wilbur, and people get excited and thinks he's awesome, so they decide not to eat him. And then Charlotte has an egg, and unfortunately she dies. Sorry, spoilers. And the egg releases many spiders, and a lot of them fly away, but 3 stay with Wilbur in the end. So that's my retelling of Charlotte's Web, for example, using Docs emojis. Or here is my explanation of photosynthesis. So sun and water and CO2 come together inside of the leaf to produce energy and oxygen. So those are some examples of using emojis to summarize, to tell a story or a title or a concept or an event. So that would be a fun way for students to do that. Another possibility would be to have them write with the emojis, creating kind of like a rebus, if you want to call it that, where basically you're taking the pictures and you're combining them together with words. So the girl went to the chicken house to get eggs. The girl took the eggs to her mother. Then she got on the bus to go to school. So that could be a fun way for students to create stories, or a fun way for you as a teacher to make stories especially for your youngest students, to give them some neat stories. Or if you want to add a little twist to it, you might remember that a rebus can also be something where you add and subtract letters. I will leave this one up to you to figure out what I am saying with the goat, the dog, and the leaf in that one. All right, what else could we do with emojis? Another one would be to explore emotions with emojis of characters in a story. So basically what I've done with this one is I went ahead and put together a template. So feel free to make a copy of this and use it however you want. There's a link to the character emoji template right here, but this is what it looks like. Let me go ahead and give a click on this and it will make a copy for me. Let that pop up here. And so basically the idea is a student could be reading a story, and what you want them to do is talk about what the character felt in the latest chapter, or in the entire book, if that might be the case, whatever you decide. And what they could do is the student could come over here and they could color in these different boxes to select the different emotions that the character was feeling, and then over here they could write about that. So in my example here, I did, again, Charlotte's Web, but I'll kind of show you how I did that. So we'll say my character is Wilbur, and we'll say that the book is Charlotte's Web. So we'll add that in for the name of my book. And then for what it is that I'm writing about, let's say that, this is what I'm going to write here. I'll make this a little bit bigger. The text is a little hard to see there. I'll bump that up a little bit larger. A little too big there. Drop that back just a bit. There we go. So basically, I'm talking about different emotions that Wilbur feels in the story. Lonely, scared, loved, worried. So the idea is what we would do is come in and pick some colors here. So let's say we're going to say that he feels lonely. And maybe this one, for me, represents lonely. That would be fine. So if that's going to be lonely, we could come up to click in the box, come up to the paint can, and let's say maybe blue will be our color for lonely. And so I fill that in blue, and I could even come over here and highlight the sentence, he feels lonely until he meets Charlotte. And then I could even use my text color, and I could even match it to that. So the blue text goes with that. And we won't do a ton of these, but let's say maybe we'll do scared. Maybe this one down here is scared, and we'll say that can be filled in with the paint can red. And again, we'll come over here and say, at first he is scared of Charlotte, and we will change the text color to red as well. So the idea is students could use some of these emotion emojis that are out there to talk about how a character is feeling in a story or a chapter, or this even could be how the student feels themselves. I mean, this doesn't have to be about the book they read. This could be, how do you feel after the lesson today? And they could use this to kind of self-reflect on their own feelings. So anyway, those are some ideas for using emojis, Google Docs, for literacy activities. Oh, and by the way, I know this is all about literacy activities, but for what it's worth, if you do, just as a bonus, if you scroll down just a little bit further in that document, I also throw in a couple examples that are not literacy specifically, like for math, using them in place of variables, or making pictographs with them. So there's a lot of other things you could do with emojis besides just writing, but it does fit in well with that. However, as a quick reminder to you, emojis will appear different on different operating systems. Okay, so just be aware of that. Chromebooks, Android, iOS, Mac OS, modern Windows should be fine, but things earlier than Windows 8.1, they probably won't look quite so good. Oh, and as one last bonus before we move on to activity number 3, there is a link at the very top of the article where I also talk about a fun thing about using emojis as writing prompts. Now, this is not Google Docs, it's actually Google Sheets. So we're kind of cheating here, but just be aware, I do have a Google sheet that will generate random emojis to serve as writing prompts for kids. So you could partner this up with the Docs activity. This could be something that they then have to use these emojis in the story that they're writing. So definitely feel free to also follow that link. That is at the top of the Emojis in Docs article. There's a link to the Google Sheets random writing prompt generator. All right, let's move on to the third activity with Google Docs. All right, for this one, I'm calling it Write Less to Write Better. All right, so what's this activity all about? Well, to get to it, we want to go to, again, control-alt-achieve.com/write-less. That is the URL that will get you to that. Or again, if you just look below the video, it should be this one right here. Have students write better by writing less with Google Docs, and that will get you out to that article. Again, control-alt-achieve.com/write-less. Okay, now what is this one all about? Well, a lot of times when we have students writing, we want them to write more, right? And by more, probably what I mean is we want them to write more frequently. We want them to write a lot, we want it to be a common thing. However, there is some value to having our students write less. And what I mean by writing less is writing less words, meaning writing within some sort of restraint. What I'm talking about here is telling students, we're going to have you do some writing, but we're going to put a limit on how much you can write. You can only use 25 words, or you can only use 200 characters, or whatever the limit could be. It could be words, it could be characters. And so the idea is this is going to force students to take a concept and really boil it down to the really key core ingredients. So this will force them to summarize key points. It's going to force them to select what is most important. It's going to force them to choose the best words possible to convey meaning. So if they use the phrase, they're saying something is very fast and they're running out of letters to use, they'll say, well, instead of very fast, let's use quick instead. So it's going to work on picking, more powerful vocabulary. It's going to help them restate concepts, and it's going to help them avoid unnecessary filler and fluff. Now, how does this fit into Google Docs? Well, it does by using a very simple tool, which is the word count tool that is built right into Google Docs. So let's go ahead and take this one for a spin and see how it works. So first thing you'd want to do is you would want to pick two things. What is your limit and what is your topic? So decide, are you going to say you can only write 20 words, 50 words, 100 words? Are you going to say you can only write 100 characters, 200 characters? Pick the limit for the students, and then pick what the topic is going to be. Are they going to be summarizing a story they're reading? The main point of an article, a description of a character? Are they going to state an argument? Are they going to come up with a new title for a story? Are they going to write a dust jacket blurb for a book, or a Netflix description of a movie, or their own personal definition of a vocab word? You decide what it is that you're going to have them write and decide on the limit. For my example today, what I'm going to use is a limit of 140 characters. So I'm going to kind of pretend it's like a tweet. Let's say it's, a Twitter tweet, 140 characters. And the topic is I have to give a summarization of a novel I have read. So that's the two things. Summarize a novel, and the limit's going to be 140 characters. Now, in addition to that, just for and add a little extra twist, I have put together a template when you're all done that you can use here. It's a compose a tweet template. So if you decide to use the 140 character limit, we'll come back to this after we're done writing. There is a Google Drawing template I've made that would allow the student to take their final result and paste it into what looks like they're composing a tweet. So we'll swing back around to that when we're done. So let's go ahead and let's make our Google document. All right, so I'm going to, for my example, summarize the novel Watership Down. Love Watership Down. Fantastic book about the rabbits and trying to find a new home and all the things they come up against. Great, great, great book. Love it, love it, love it. So here is, I've already typed this up ahead of time to save a little bit of time. Here is my first stab at this. So let me go ahead and paste that in. So here's my first stab at this. And actually, let me put at the top, we'll call this summarization. Oops, summarization. All right. So here is my first stab at this. I said, Watership Down is the story of a group of rabbits searching for a new home. Led by Hazel, the rabbits face many obstacles and threats from humans and other animals. In the end, they find and defend a new home. All right, so there is my first attempt at this. Now, I've been told by my teacher that I have to write within 140 characters for this example. I think I feel pretty good about that. Well, how do I find out for sure? Well, here's what you do. After they write, the student will now come in and highlight the text they've written. Now, it's important that they actually select the text they've written, because if not, the tool will give you a count for the whole page. So if I've got like directions up here at the top, so let's say I had some directions up here at the top. Maybe this was an assignment pushed out through Google Classroom, which again, I think would be a great way to do this, very easy way to push this out to your students. So let's say I've got a title at the top, I've got some directions. If I just run the word count tool on this, it'll count up everything on the page, which is not what I want it to do. I just want to count up the characters and the words just in what I've written. So highlight the stuff that you've written, and then you go up to the Tools menu, and there is the word count option there. Give that a click, and now what it's going to do is it's going to count for you how many pages, how many words, and how many characters you've written. So I've got one page, words, 40 words out of 56, because 56 is the whole page. 40 words is what I've selected. Characters, 208 out of 305. So the whole page is 305. What I typed, 208 characters. So I can tell, oh, I've got to get it down to 140. So now comes in, what's really important here? What can we trim? What can we restate? How can we edit this to get it down further? So I worked on this a little bit, and here is my final version of it that I was able to get it down to. So I came up with Watership Down is about rabbits searching for a home. Led by Hazel, they face threats from humans and animals until they claim a new home. If I highlight that and I go to Tools and I go to word count, 139 characters. All right, with one character to spare, just made it under there. So this can be a great activity for students to write less, and that's going to make them happy. Say, hey guys, guess what? We have a writing assignment, but I don't want you to write more. I want you to write less. Again, it's going to help them to summarize and to pick the best vocab word and think what's really, really important in this. Now, again, if you were doing this as a like a Twitter activity, so to speak, if it was 140 characters, when done, they could come in and they could copy version of that. And like I said, on my blog post that is found at controlaltachieve.com/write-less. On that blog post, I do have a template for a compose a tweet. And if you give a click on that, it'll make a copy of that template. And basically the student could just go ahead and paste in their final result here. There's a text box. They could take out the what's happening, paste in their final thing, and put their name. Here we go. And that could be their final product as they put it together like it's a tweet. All right. So I would encourage you to try that out. Use the word count tool as a way to encourage students to write better by writing less. Excellent. All right, let's keep on going. That brings us to our fourth and final fun literacy activity with Google Docs. And this one is choose your own adventure stories. Now, to get to the page for this one, it is at controlaltachieve.com/docs CYOA, choose your own adventure. So docs CYOA. Or again, if you're just looking below the live video right here, choose your own adventure stories with the Google Docs. That is the link that will take you out to that blog post. But again, controlaltachieve.com/docs CYOA. All right, now choose your own adventure. I grew up on these books when I was a kid, loved to choose your own adventure stories, and it can be a great activity for students. Now, there's a lot of ways to make choose your own adventure stories with Google tools. I did a webinar, I don't remember now, sometime maybe a year back or so, where I talked about doing this with Google Slides. So if you're interested in using Google Slides for this, I've actually got a whole webinar. Oh, actually, it's up here. There's a link to it at the top of the blog post. There's a whole blog post and webinar on how you can do the exact same thing with Google Slides. Now, if you want to, you could also do this with Google Forms. You could use branching from multiple choice questions. You could do this with Google Sites using hyperlinks to jump to different pages. You could do this with YouTube videos using the annotation links or the end screen links to jump to other videos. But in my opinion, out of all of those, I think using Google Docs is probably the easiest way to do a choose your own adventure story. All of these are great options, and I would encourage you to try each of them. But if you're looking for what's probably going to be the easiest one for kids to just hit the ground running with and be successful, I would say Google Docs is probably the easiest way to do a choose your own adventure story. Now, here's basically what it comes down to. Obviously, at first, they do need to plan. It's going to be really, really, really helpful if they plan this story out, because once you get into it and you're trying to link all the different pages together, it can get confusing really fast. So I would encourage you to, if you want to use technology, use something like Lucidchart or Real-Time Board to diagram out all the different branches of the story. Or just use Post-it notes. That'll work perfectly fine. Just write a little summary on each Post-it note and stick them on the board up on the wall and connect them together. That might be the easiest way to do it. But you want to definitely plan this out ahead of time. After that, you want to go ahead and write your story in Google Docs. So let me fire up a Google Doc here. And for my example, I'm going to be using a story I've used many times before. This is, if you've seen my other webinar on using Google Slides, you've seen this story. Many years ago when I was a teacher, before becoming a tech integration guy, I worked with the Gifted and Talented program, and we used to do this activity. And so I have a story from that my students wrote called Dragon Quest. And so I'm just going to use some text from that for this example here today. So what I'm going to do is I've already got this typed up. I'm just going to copy and paste it. So let me highlight it real quick, and I will drag this over. And let me paste it in here. And there we go. Okay, so this is not the whole story. The story itself is actually pretty long. It's like 80 or 90 pages long. I just grabbed the first 7 or so pages of it. So the point is your students would go to Google Docs and they would type up their story. So page 1, it's like an introduction. Page 2 gets a little bit deeper into the story. Page 3, they get to their first choice where they have to decide, will they go to the peddlers for supplies or continue on without supplies? And from there on out, you get, choose the right path, choose the left path, and so forth. So it starts branching at that point. So the students want to start by basically typing up their story. Now, a couple of key things that are going to be important. They're going to want to put a page break after each page so that each page is its own individual thing. You don't want a student seeing text from a page they haven't chosen yet. So as they write it up, let them go ahead and type up their story. And again, they can just share this doc for a whole group. It's a wonderful way for a group activity. So one student can start the doc, share it with their teammates. Everybody can work on the story together. So what they're going to want to do is for each page, they're going to come in here, click in front of page 2, and insert a page break. So they will want to break each of these onto their own pages. That will be important. So I'm just going to go through real quick, click in front of each page. That's why I only pasted in 7 of the 80 or some pages here. We'll just do a quick page break on these. And so that's an important thing, get everything broken up onto its own pages. Then if they want to, they can also make this a little bit more attractive. They can add in pictures. And I think I've probably got some pictures here I can pull in from when the students did this. So let me pull up some pictures here, and I won't put a whole bunch of them in. I'll just put a few in here so that you can kind of see the idea. But in Google Docs, you can use the insert image option, and that will let you upload pictures. That'll let you grab pictures from your albums or from your drive or run a search for them. I actually have the pictures already in another document. I'm just going to copy and paste them just to make it easy for now. So let me come over here and I will copy and paste the picture in. So here's my first picture. I'll just turn on, wrapping is already turned on, great. So I'll just drag it over to the side. There we go. And so there's page 1 with that picture. I'll do a couple pictures. We won't do a whole bunch of them here. Just give you the idea. Here's page 2. Let's copy and paste that image in. Again, these were all created by students. The students wrote the story and they drew the pictures. I just basically digitized all the stuff they had done, but they did all of the writing and drawing of the pictures. We'll throw in one more here, and that'll be enough pictures for now. Okay, very good. All right, so the students have been working on their story. They've got pages, they've got page breaks, they've got images. Now, the next thing that's really important in this is we're going to be putting in links. So at the bottom of each of the pages, when they get to a choice, these are going to become clickable links. Do you want to go to the peddlers for supplies, or do you want to continue on without supplies? These links need to jump to the appropriate page in the story for them to keep on reading. How do we do that? Well, here's the real key. This is what it really, really comes down to. This is the important part. What you have to do to make those links work is the top of each page, whatever text is up there, like page 1, page 2, etc. That text, it needs to be formatted a very special way so that you can link to it. Okay, so how does that work? Well, here's the way it works. Go in, highlight the title of that page, like page 1. And then what you want to do is go up to your menu bar here at the top. And where it says normal text, you want to click there and you want to turn it into a heading. You need to make the page titles into headings. It really doesn't matter which heading you pick, heading 1, 2, 3. 1 is bigger, 2 is smaller, 3 is smaller still, but you basically need to make it a heading. I'll just say heading 1. Okay, so page 1 becomes heading 1. Page 2, make it heading 1. Basically, what we're doing is we're going to make them all the same type of heading. I'm just making them all heading level 1. Now, that's critical because if you don't turn them into headings, you can't link to them. Headings are necessary for linking. So I'm going to come in here, very quickly make every one of these into a heading. Now, another fun thing about headings is not only can you turn things into headings, but once you've turned them into a heading, you can also format it if you want it to look a little bit special. So if you decide, I want my heading to be a little different than it looks here, no problem. Go in and highlight it. Maybe you want the heading to be a different color. Okay, let's say the heading is going to be blue, and let's say it's going to be a different font. We'll say it's going to be something kind of cool for our font here. Oh, I don't know what'll be a good example in this one here. I'll just pick, we'll go with freckle face. Yep, that's kind of cool. Okay, so there we go. So the point is you can go in and you can highlight your heading and you can change the font, the color, all that. And then what you can do is with it highlighted, with that heading highlighted, go back up to your heading menu, go down to heading 1, and from the little arrow clicking off to the side, you can say update all heading 1s to match. And basically you're saying from now on, heading 1 in this document is going to look that way. So you can say update heading 1 to match. And now if I scroll down to page 2, guess what? It's got the same heading. So does page 3, so does page 4, and so on. Okay, so that's just a fun little thing you can do if you want to tweak what the headings look like. All right, so we're getting really close to the fun part now. So we've written our story, we've put in our pictures, we've put in our headings, very important. We've got our page breaks, we've got our headings in. Now comes time for the links. So how does that work? So what you have to do is scroll down to the bottom of the page. And for this first page, all it does is continue on. There's not a choice. It just takes you to page 2. But what you do is you come down and you highlight the text that's going to be the link. With it highlighted, go up and click on the link button up in the top toolbar. Normally, when you do a link, it's to jump out to a website, www something or other. But notice, because there's headings in my document, if I click on the link button in the drop-down menu, one of the options is headings. I can click there and look at that. There's all my pages. This one should link to page 2. So I choose page 2, hit apply, and now if somebody clicks that link, it'll jump them straight to page 2. Then I can do the same thing for page 2. Highlight the continue there into a link and have it go to the heading of page 3. And then finally, page 3, we get a choice. Do we go to the peddlers or continue on without? Here's where those Post-it notes are going to come in handy. You got to have good planning here or this gets really confusing really fast, okay? So from here, if I go, if I decide to go to get supplies, that's page 4. If I decide to go on without supplies, that's page 5. So it's important that I know where these links go. So if I go to the peddlers, highlight that, click the link button and say, go to page 4. If I instead go on without supplies, highlight that, click the link, go to page 5. And so now if I click here, I'll go to page 4. If I click here, I'll go to page 5. Now, to prove this actually works, basically just click on it, click the link there, and boom, jumps you right to page 5. And you'll see how that works. Now, one of the pages takes you to your death, which happens a lot in Choose Your Own Adventure stories. At the end of page 5, it says, go back and try again. You can highlight that, turn that into a link, and go to the heading and send them back to page 1. Now, obviously, I can't put a link in to a page that doesn't exist yet. So like this story actually goes a whole lot further. So like, do you go through the underbrush or take, this path? Well, I don't have any more pages, beyond that. I've run out of pages there. So these I can't actually link. So the thing is, the students need to write the whole story first. The whole thing has to be written before you can put a link to something. It has to be there for you to link to it. Now, what does this look like when you're all done? Well, I have in the blog post at controlaltachieve.com/docs, I have put the full version of this right here under sample story, Dragon Quest. If you give that a click, that'll take you out to the actual story itself. And basically, I've just shared this as a view-only document, so anybody can click on it and view it. scroll on down through, you'll get the story. And at that point, you can start clicking on the links. Now, let me do this. Let me open it in an incognito window, though, because I'm the owner of the document. So here, let's do this. Let's open this in a new incognito window. That way, I can't actually change anything. And it'll be like I'm really clicking on it for real. So let's come down. So we turn off our little things there. So here is our about page. We click begin the story. Takes me to page 1. We click continue. That'll take me down to page 2. We click continue, and now we're time to make a choice. So do we go to the peddlers for supplies? Sure. That takes us to that page. Do we take the right or the left path? Let's take the left path. So I now have met up with these shadowy figures. Do I arm my sword, arm my bow, or run? I'll decide to run. And oops, did not turn out well for me. They are goblin warriors and they have killed me. So now go back to the beginning to try again. Beginning. So there you have the story. And actually, it is pretty long. It says 91 pages. So I would encourage you to try it out. It's actually a real fun story. Turned out really well. I think the kids did a great job with that. And again, it fits really nicely into using a Google Doc to do this. And again, you could do it with slides or forms or other things. The key to a doc, though, is put in page breaks and use headings. If you do that, then you can use the linking tool to actually link out to those different headings. In the end, make sure you share the story. Just share it as a link, so anybody who clicks on the link can view the story and try it out. So that's another fun activity that you can do with Google Docs. All right, we are getting really close to the end here, so I'm going to take a look at the Q&A doc and see how we are doing with the questions and see if anybody has any questions there. Taking a look here, I see we had a question about the emojis not showing up in color. Hopefully I was able to answer that. That again, it really does depend upon the operating system you're using. Let's see. So that question came up again. Okay. The random emoji generator, that one is on the Control-Alt-Achieve site. If you go to the article I have on 5 emoji learning activities with Google Docs, at the very top of that article, I have a link that breaks you off to the emoji random writing prompt generator blog post. That one was from earlier. That was back in November. And so that's a separate post, but you can get to it through the article on emoji learning with docs. It's at the top. That'll pop you out to there. Once you get there, you'll see a Google spreadsheet link. You click that, it'll make a copy for you. And basically what this one does is it gives you some tabs at the bottom where you can either get 2 random emojis, 3 random emojis, 4 random emojis, or 5 random emojis. And then anytime you refresh the page by reloading it or pressing Control-R, it'll recalculate the page and it will give you a new set of random emojis that you could use as a writing prompt, which would be a fun thing to tie back into the other article, the other activity we were talking about. All right. What grade level would you recommend for choose your own story? Well, I did it with middle schoolers, so I know it worked really well with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. I guess it would just depend. Definitely, it could go higher than that. High schoolers could have a blast with it. The question would be, how low would you go with it? Well, basically, it just depends on how much you might need to intervene to assist them with stuff. Without a doubt, children, 3rd, 4th grade, 5th grade absolutely could be writing these stories. You might need to do a little assistance at some point. The lower grades you go there as far as going in and formatting the headers and putting in the links. So it might be something that the students are doing a lot of the creativity, but you're helping with some of the technical parts of it. That's a possibility. Let me see, do I have any rubrics for grading these? I do not. I do not have any rubrics specific to the activities today. If anybody does have a rubric that you think would apply to one of the 4 activities, please feel free to throw those into the Q&A doc. That would be great. I do not have any rubrics that go specifically with these activities today. Blackout docs. Are there any copyright issues you should be concerned with copying and pasting articles? Well, again, I think it really comes down to what are you doing with them. If it's an article that's on a website that the student is allowed to go and read, like any of the websites I've got listed in here. So if you go back to the article on docs blackout, the websites I've got listed here are all freely available to use. So Newsella, Tween Tribune, Dogo News, Scholastic News Online. These are all websites that are, these are not subscription. Now, some of these have a subscription option to get some additional features, but none of these are sites that cost anything. They're providing these articles for people to use. So in that case, I would not be aware of a problem with having the students use the same text they would normally find on those articles and just putting that text in a Google Doc and doing the blackout on top of that. Do these activities work on an iPad? So that's a good question. For Android devices and iPads, I cannot guarantee that all 4 of these activities will work exactly the way I showed them today. There is definitely a possibility that the mobile version of Docs may be lacking some of the features we saw here today. Now, having said that, the mobile version of Docs is constantly getting better. Google is always adding new features. There was just a post this morning about some new features they added to the mobile version of Docs. It is getting new features all the time. So the mobile version of Docs, little by little, is starting to match the desktop version more and more and more. So off the top of my head, I apologize. I can't run down through all 4 of them and tell you for sure which ones are going to work exactly the same on Android and iOS and which ones may have some issues. So I would say before you try it with your students, try it out on the devices they'll be using and see if some of them work exactly the same or if you end up losing a couple of features on the mobile version. Without a doubt, this is going to work on a Chromebook. It's going to work on a Mac. It's going to work on a PC. Try ahead of time, though, with iOS and Android with those just to see. All right. I think that's all the questions in the Q&A docs. So as we go to wrap up here today, just want to remind you that all of the resources for this session can be found at tiny.cc/spark242. That takes you to that page we've been looking at here today, where you'll find the recorded video. You'll find the slideshow. You'll find all 4 of the literacy activities with a blog post for each one with lots more details on how to do those. The chat doc is there even after the fact. If you want to check out some of the questions people had, there's the evaluation form. Would encourage you to fill that out. The feedback always helps us to improve these. And hey, get yourself a certificate of attendance for watching this. There's a quiz at the bottom there you can take, pass the quiz, and it will email you a PDF certificate of attendance for 1 contact hour. While you're there on the website, definitely check out the upcoming webinars we have. I've got one in about 2 weeks on using Google Sheets for fun activities in all subject areas, not just math. Also, check out the tab called Recorded Trainings, where you can see all of the previous webinars. These would be ones that I have done as well as Anthony. You can also see these on my Control-Alt-Achieve website on my Webinars tab. There I've broken out specifically the webinars that I have done. Those are all available there for you guys as well. Lastly, we have a contact page where you can get in touch with me if you need to reach me, and a newsletter link at the top if you want to sign up for our Sparklines newsletter to get monthly updates on what we're doing. Likewise, on my Control-Alt-Achieve page, there is a newsletter there as well, specifically to the things I put on that website. And again, want to thank everybody so very much for taking the time to be with us here today. Look forward to having you join us in the future for other upcoming educational technology webinars. Take care.